This next piece, Soulmates, I created while I was living on Telegraph Hill on the Filbert Steps. And for those that aren't familiar with San Francisco, the Filbert Steps literally run all the way down from the level of where the San Francisco Bay is, all the way up to the top of Telegraph Hill to Coit Tower. And I was very fortunate for a period of time to live on the Filbert Steps, just about 25 or 30 steps down from Coit Tower. So it was just a wonderful place to live. I had a view of the bay, I had a view of the Bay Bridge, and a good part of the city. It was a wonderful experience. And part of that experience was just spending time on the deck in front of my little apartment. And I would spend time there with my girlfriend at the time, Nikki, now my wife, and we would drink wine and enjoy the view. And this painting represents that experience. And it's the sense of joy, it's the sense of abundance represented by the fruit and the wine on the table. And the name of the piece, Soulmates, is just that. There's Nikki and I that are represented in a more literal way on the ground behind the table, but then if you look at the images of the figures that are silhouetted against the moon, that is literally meant to represent our souls coming together, and hence the name Soulmates. This next piece is called Wine and Song, and it's a very simple, straightforward representation of two key interests in my own life, one being great wine and the other being music. I also spend time as a singer-songwriter, and I've been writing songs for almost 20 years now, and I have a few CDs that I've produced as well. And I wanted to have something that was a very simple representation of those two aspects of my life, and the result was Wine and Song. Priorities was completed in 1997. It's an acrylic on canvas piece, and it's probably at that transition I was making from more abstract pieces into more representational work. There are certainly abstract elements to the piece, and there's the first manifestation of that central figure, the kind of spirit that's coming out of the little pot on the ground. And the significance of the different elements in the painting and the little image of what you could call either a party hat or a dunce cap, depending on how you're looking at it, is it's this central figure that is literally juggling all the forces in his or her life and trying to make some sense of them. The figure on the left part of the painting, the black figure, represents either danger or the unknown, and on the right side you have representations of a bottle for red wine, you've got representations of a guitar for the music, and then the more central figure that's representational of, at that time, was meant to be representational of myself and some of the things I was going through at that time and some of the decisions I was trying to make. It's arguably, when you contrast a painting like Priorities against a newer piece or a more joyful piece, let's say like Napa Valley Crush, those are really two ends of the emotional spectrum, as well as two ends of my development as an artist. This next piece, One More Makes Three, means a great deal to me, and the reason it means a great deal to me, apart from some of my other work, it's the very first time that my daughter Sienna was represented in one of my pieces. The One More Makes Three is an allusion to the addition of her to our family. So previously with my wife and I, and now with Sienna, we're a family of three. And it was just a celebration of that. So you can see the circle, which is at the central point of the piece. It does indeed represent the world, or the earth in a sense, because it represents my world and what are the components and the elements of my life. So you'll see the representation certainly of Nikki and myself and our daughter Sienna. You'll even see the kind of meant to be humorous representation of even little Sienna, who's now only 11 months old, raising a glass of wine as well to toast the family. You'll see the representations of abundance, of music with the guitar. You'll see representation of the family car, the family home, and in the background you can still see the little sailboat, which is very prominent, of course, in Racing to the Moon, one of the other pieces that we looked at this evening. So again, one of my favorite pieces. It means a great deal to me, and luckily people have reacted very strongly to it as well. They like it. I've sold a few pieces, a few limited edition G-clays of this piece, and I'm very happy that it is part of my body of work. The thing that's unique about this particular piece is I had the name of the piece in my head before I even started working on it. It was just the idea of using my image of a guitar, playing with the idea of air guitar, and having the pieces distributed symmetrically around the central figure that ironically is not even touching a guitar. And it reminded me too of the 80s film Pretty in Pink, where the director of Pretty in Pink approached the band The Psychedelic Furs and said, "I'm creating this movie, and the movie is called Pretty in Pink, and you guys write me a song. It has to be called Pretty in Pink. It has to be about this young woman going through high school." And they came back with the song Pretty in Pink, and it kind of I was reminded of that story when I came up with the air guitar. The last piece we're going to look at this evening is Release. Release was painted around the same time as Priorities back in the late 90s. It was painted, rather than being on canvas, it was painted on wood panel. And I paint on wood panel often. The reason I do that is I really like the resistance of a wood panel versus a canvas. And it just gives me much better line control when I'm creating the different lines and the different spaces and the different components within the piece. So I really like working with wood panel far more than I do painting on canvas. As far as the composition of Release, it's very similar to Priorities in terms of the main components within the piece. It is meant to symbolize a kind of letting go. If Priorities is the structure and the stress and the conflict, inner conflict, I'd say Release is kind of the letting go of all that and finding a bit of harmony. And that's why, rather than in Priorities where the images are kind of on either side with this kind of turmoil in the middle, with Release you have this kind of central, almost unification of these different elements, and the spirit being visualized as coming out from all of these elements, in a sense being released by that unity or by that harmony. I want to thank all of you for joining me this evening for this virtual online reception. I was really happy to share a little bit more information about these different pieces as far as my process and some of the inspiration behind them. I again welcome any of your questions. I'll be online for the remainder of the evening, so feel free to stay on and chat with me directly or via the Facebook wall. And if you have any questions either this evening or after this evening, again, don't hesitate to get in contact with me. If you want to learn more about how you can purchase my work, you can use the link above to visit my portfolio page, where you can purchase the different pieces that you've seen this evening. And again, thank you. Good night.